I would like to do is introduce Barry. Barry is our coach, mentor, high performance in within Team Alberta and Hockey Alberta. He's been a fantastic person, a fantastic mentor for someone like myself. And I know there's a lot of you on the presentation tonight that he has helped out, throughout your coaching careers and even sometimes in your playing careers. He's a wonderful man, a person that I admire, and a great ambassador for our game. So beyond that, if there's anything else, obviously just you guys can put into the chat room. I'll be monitoring and we'll go from there. But I will now turn it over. So I'll stop sharing my screen and I'm going to turn it on over to Barry Medori and ask him to take it away.
Hi, can everybody hear me? Patty, thumbs up? Okay, perfect. Like Patty said, welcome. I think it's really exciting to be doing this. I'm sure most of you, just because of what's been going on the last few months, have been sitting in your house, and probably this isn't the first webinar that you've been listening to. Certainly from my perspective, it's been a great opportunity to learn, to catch up with a whole bunch of new things that are going on out there, and also to touch base with people maybe that I haven't for quite a while. So really want to thank everybody for taking the time tonight to be part of this process. Hopefully at the end of it, you might have learned one or two things. I always say when I do presentations that if you can take something away from it, it's been more than worthwhile, and especially if you can end up using it. Near and dear to my heart is this topic. What I'm going to try and do tonight is share a little bit about the why of mental performance, and then get into maybe a couple tools and some different things that you could possibly try to use as the year ends up going on for you. And I'm going to do that through a little bit of fact and lots of storytelling as we end up going. You are going to need at one point something to write with and a piece of paper. I do have a test for you. It's not a long one and it's not a hard one, but you'll need something to write with as we end up going. So as we get started here, I've had the pleasure of getting to work with tons and tons of great coaches, whether it's a challenge or a Pee Wee Prospects or an Alberta Cup or our Team Alberta or even the Team Canada, the people that I've worked with. And one of them one time told a story, so I'm not going to steal his thunder, but Serge Lajoie told us a story about him taking Mark and Izzy camping, and Mark had to get up one night to go to the washroom. And the washroom in the trailer didn't work, so Serge had to take Mark down the steps of the trailer and out to the outhouse, which was a couple of 100 yards away. And he brought a flashlight with him, and as Mark went down on the stairs, Serge would point it down to the stairs and then back up. When they got to the bottom, Mark asked where the outhouse was. Serge pointed the flashlight at it and said, "That's where we're going." And I guess the whole reason why I'm giving you that story is as we end up going through hockey as a coach, we want to start with the end in mind. So the flashlight, the analogy of shining it way at the outhouse and then pointing it down so that Mark could walk safely and not get hit by branches and that on the way, tells us that as we go through any journey, whether it's in coaching or anything in life, that we need to end up understanding that you can't just get to the end to start with, but you obviously need to know that there's something there that you're working towards. So that's my hope and ambition tonight, is to let you guys get to that point that you're going to find that outhouse. As this video starts, I want you to put yourself in the runner's head. And what would you do? What would you think?
Minnesota finished second this stretch a year ago. She was in 1-4. And Dornan is probably going to be your favorite. She actually won the NCAA championships in 2006 in the 800, but she only won one Big Ten championship in the 2 years. 3 laps. In this event, 600 meters, 3 times around the 200-meter track here at the field house.
What a bold move by Fawn. She's looking very confident, and the Penn State runner is just running amazing today. She did win her heat in the 400, but ended up taking 4th overall.
That's Fawn Dorr moving into the lead, a sophomore from Penn State. Dorn has been running second. Dorn last year scored 23 points for the Golden Gophers in their Big Ten championship. So they're really relying on getting a lot of points from her this weekend. And she's coming by Fawn Dorn now in the home stretch, heading into the bell down. Dorn falling down, gets up quickly, but that's going to cost him. Lucky she wasn't injured. Her teammate just went to the front, though, so they may be able to recover from that. And Dorgan is flying down the back.
She is catching up.
She is going to catch Von Dorn, and she may catch the leader. Wow.
She's got 5.
This is a gutsy effort. Von Dorn. She's moving to 3rd. Dorgan coming down the stretch from the outside. Dorgan coming out strong. Dorgan all the way.
So when you watch that amazing race by that girl, there's a whole lot of reason why I would end up putting us in a presentation to start it out. And if we were sitting in a room, I would ask for audience feedback. Obviously, I can't do that here, so I'm just going to share a couple of things. One, there had to have been something that this athlete is being trained and given, that she ended up being able to have the ability to get up and A, finish the race, and B, have the courage to be able to not only finish it, but win it. So there had to have been some tools in the toolbox. There had to be some coaching along the way that got her there. She had to have grit. She had to have mental toughness, all of those things. And honestly, when I started with Hockey Alberta and doing the mentorship program and then getting into more of this mental performance piece, these are the stories that really captivated me. It made me really understand the importance of the mental aspect of the game. Not just the other things as coaches that we always like to talk about, whether it's a power play or how to end up killing a penalty, things of that nature. So this is a hook, I think, to get you guys thinking a little bit too about the importance of mental performance and all the things that might end up going into it as we roll on tonight. So one of the things that I do with our Team Alberta coaching staffs, once we start going in our process, is I challenge them. You want to create an environment for success for your athletes as well as for the staff. And in order to do that, we have 3 buckets or 3 pillars that we typically will end up looking at: a physical one, a technical one, and a mental one. And what I do is I ask each one of the coaches, and you can do this as I'm talking, is just think about what percentage will you end up putting in each one of those buckets to end up filling it to be 100%. Old school coaches would have probably overloaded it in the technical side. New school coaches, lots would end up probably overloading it maybe a little bit more into the mental side. There's not really a right or a wrong answer. Short-term competition is a little bit different than a club team in a whole season. Honestly, you need all 3 of them to end up making a good athlete, a good team, and allowing them to end up performing to the best of their ability. So it's another one of those things that we've learned over the last probably 10 years of how important that mental bucket is. And again, as I say, at one point, there was probably very little time spent on the mental aspect of the game. So what really got me going on the left-hand side is I taught for many years, administrated and ran a hockey school. And I always felt that as I went through it, I tried to teach every student, every player that I ever had the same way, that is if they were my own child and I wanted to water them. I wanted them to be part of a garden that was going to grow and evolve and develop and be the best that they could be. And so the story on the right-hand side with the water bottle is a number of years ago. This was one of our Team Alberta teams, and it was a player that was on it. After the games, the kids are given an hour. We stretch and roll They clean the room, they shower, they're allowed to go see their parents before we end up getting on the bus to go back and eat and do a relaxation session and then go to bed and get ready for the next day. Anyways, I noticed the first day that this one player came back fairly quickly and some tears in his eyes, and he came by himself. So part of my job, the mental performance guy, is I waited till it was a better time and I asked him what had gone on. And I'd done a couple sessions already, and I'll get a little bit more into my role as it goes. But needless to say, found out from him that his parents were really hard on him and didn't think that he'd played a good game. In fact, both mom and dad had ripped him for how poorly he played. So we talked about it. I gave him something to read, and we talked about it the next morning to get him prepared for the next game. Obviously, we have 5 games in 6 nights. We want to make sure these kids are the best that they can be each day. And again, like Patty said, getting better every game. So day 2, game's over. He played better, came back, same really quickly, more tears in his eyes. So we chatted more. And at the end, he just said it had been going on since he was 5 or 6 years old. Dad had coached him, and he was really frustrated, couldn't play well. So we decided that night, because, the 16-year-old, that he was going to ask his parents not to come to any more of the games. And so went up the next night, and he got a goal and played really well. And again, it didn't work out well with them, so he told them he didn't want them to come back anymore to the event. And that between the second and third game, we came up with this water bottle idea. So every shift, what he would go out and do, first off, he had to put it on the water bottle, and he had all of those letters above it. But he had to write down each shift for each period if he won it, if it was an even up shift, or if he'd lost it. And it had nothing to do with him scoring a goal, making a big hit, doing anything. It was in his own mind that he'd gone out and played hard and done things that the coach had wanted him to. So from game 2 to game 6, he became one of our best forwards. He responded very well to things that I had done with him, but also with the coaches, things that they asked him to do. And he basically played free of anything, any worries and any burdens and things like that. And it was another one that really caught me and taught me the importance of mental performance. Like, no matter how skilled and good these players are, that if we don't understand some of that side of it, that there's outside factors in that, no matter how good we are as a coach, we're not going to help that player or those players to become the best that they could be. So, story we're sharing to tell you a little bit about why I'm so positive and excited about doing this tonight. So, talk a little bit about mindset, and what I'm trying to do in setting the table for you is just to give you some ideas about why mental performance is important. So this was our Canada Winter Games boys team in Red Deer in 2019. That group probably had the most skilled forwards we've ever had come out of the province. Unbelievably talented. And the things that they could do with a puck would just knock your socks off. Hopefully some of you had the chance to go watch them play in Red Deer. They ended up getting a bronze medal out of it, which we were all really proud of. But they left feeling that they should have and could have done more. And part of the thing is they all played really good hockey coming into this environment. They were all used to scoring goals in bunches at will, and hence I put the light switch on that side that they could sort of turn it off and on whenever they wanted to. So they could be down some goals and, somebody'd pick it up and suddenly they'd score 2 or 3 and the game would be in the bag for them. Well, as it ended up going, and you notice the top right when it says pound the stone, and what we were looking at is getting that 1% better every day. And we did as a team. They really grew. But we met a team from Ontario in the semifinals that we spotted them 5 goals. Third period, I said to Mike Krejci, my boss, if we can get 1, we could end up winning this thing. We almost came back. Ontario did beat us. They went on to play in the gold medal game against Quebec. We ended up playing in the bronze against Saskatchewan. And it's one of those things when we talk about mental performance, it's another one. These kids were so skilled and so used to doing well that the giving up too many goals all at once was really costly, especially against a team that's like the Old West. There's always going to be somebody a little quicker than you. The great part about this group that I'm so proud of is that they did not quit. They came back in the third period with a vengeance. And like I say, they almost ended up pulling it off. So just another example of the importance of mental performance and what we try to end up doing to help these players perform their best and get to the next levels. So here's where you end up needing a piece of paper and something to write with. I'm going to give you 6 questions. It's true and false. And I've tried to make it so that it's from a coach's eyes, not a player. This would be an example of something that I would give the players, whether it's at a summer camp or a fall camp, prior to us going to a tournament. And the reason I do it is so that I get to know them a little bit better and I can share it with the coaches. So here are the questions. All you need to do is write true or false for each one. So I frequently worry about mistakes. And one of the things that I tell the players is, please be honest. Nobody else is going to know how you write this out. So it's just you, but be honest because you might learn something from it as well. Number 2, I really get down on myself during games or practice when I think I mess up. So as a coach, it could be letting a drill go too long, not having a drill in there that you should have, forgetting about something, talking to the players in a bad manner, whatever it happens to be. So you get down on yourself when you think you mess up. Number 3, it's easy for me to let go of my mistakes. Number 4, if we start out badly, it's hard for me to turn my team's performance around. So you're not sure of what to do or how to do it. It's difficult for you. Number 5, I get distracted by what the parents think whenever I screw up. And I'm sure we've all had that come at us at some point in time in our careers. And the last one, I bounce back quickly from setbacks, bad breaks, and mistakes. So now we're going to mark it. And like I said, there's no right or wrong, but it's going to tell you a little bit about yourself. So number 1 would be false. 2 would be false. 3 would be true. 4 is false. 5, false. 6 is true. These 6 relate to, in grit, one of the 2 words that grit is made up of is resilience, or the ability to rebound, to bounce back from things that go on. So if I was working with you as a group of athletes, if you got 6 out of 6, I would be really confident with us, just like our Team Alberta group that I just shared with you, that no matter what the score was, us being down, that I would feel that I'd have the confidence that we could bounce back. If you scored a lot less, that might mean that you've got issues when things go bad, they go really south. And that becomes what my job is in the sports performance world of Team Alberta, is to try and help those players when I see that they are types of players like that, individuals. I try to help them by talking to them, giving them different tools that they can try and use throughout our camps and at the event. And it's like that rubber ball on the right-hand side. When it's fully inflated, no matter where you bounce that ball, equal and opposite reaction, it's going to come back hard at you, and whatever direction you put it in. So that's a resilient ball. But just think about it. If we punctured a hole or 2 in it and there was no air in it, what would happen when we threw the ball down to the ground? Well, it's not going to bounce back up. So it's a simple little tool that you could actually use with your players and say that you're a mental performance expert if you've got kids that are that way and aren't very resilient to situations that happen in a game. We had one year, all 4 of our goalies at the summer camp, none of them were resilient. They all scored 1 to 3 out of 6, and they were our goalies. So I knew I had a whole bunch of work ahead of me leading into the fall camp and then the actual tournament, because 2 of the 4, no matter which ones we took, they were not easy to bounce back. So lots of homework for them as we ended up going through. Excuse me. This slide I put in there, some of you may have seen it, but Louis Pugh was just sort of an eccentric sort of a guy that decided he wanted to swim in the highest lake in the world, and it ended up being in the Himalayas at the base of it. And cold water, even fish weren't in it because it was glacier fed. So he went in there, and I can't play it for you because it's 17 minutes, so I'm just going to tell you the story. But he got himself prepared to go in the first time, and all he was wearing was goggles, a swimming cap, and a bathing suit. And so he used pump up music. He did lots of aerobics to start with, and the video showed it, what he was doing. He jumped in the water. He went about 20 yards, and he was going hard as he could. And he went down, and he almost drowned. They pulled him out, rescued him, and came back, and he was ready to quit. He just said it couldn't be done. But some of the Sherpas up there were pretty smart. I don't know if they were mental performance people or not, but they knew their stuff, and they convinced him to take a couple days and to try it again. But instead of doing it the same way that he did last time, to maybe change his tack, to do it a little bit differently. And so when he went back in the water a couple days later, he did. And he swam very slowly, and, you know, with the crawl and breaststroke and whatever else. And he actually ended up making it from one side to the other. So he accomplished his goal. And what he said at the end of the video, two things. One is what worked at the beginning may not work now. And what kind of a mindset do people need to try something new? And so that's where I sort of leave the first part of this presentation with, as I planted those two thoughts with you, is what you've done in the past as a coach may not work now. It's almost like a player, right? What got them there may not keep them there. And what kind of a mindset do you need to have to be able to make change? So hopefully I can convince you that mental performance is a really important thing for you to take back to your team in the fall when things get rolling again, and to start working with them on it. So awareness, we need to be personally aware of ourselves and our kids. If we're not, we're in trouble right from the start. I can have the best practice in the world. I can be the best bench coach, but if I don't know my kids, I'm going to be in trouble. So here's sort of the first lesson for you, is getting to know your kids. And your players, they can be, we did this a number of years ago with Hockey Alberta, and some people have used the color one, and I think there's, I can't remember names of other tests, but basically what it is just an ID test of the type of personality that you are. And I really like this one because it's simple and it's easy to remember. The owl would end up being a collaborator, the one on the team that always is trying to make things right for everybody. The compromiser is the fox at the end of the day. He's trying to figure things out, Machiavelli, every situation to make it work. The competition obviously would be the shark. That's the player or players that they hate to lose. They're going to do anything to end up winning. The teddy bear is the accommodator, the social butterfly, and male or female, there's always one or two of those on every team. And then the turtle, the one that avoids everything. So anytime there's something that comes up that grates against him or other players, he'll just shell up, he'll avoid things. And it's interesting, but if you looked at your players this way, made a list of the kids that you had in your team last year and put them in these 5 categories, you'd have some in every category. And those words that would describe these kids would come to fruition, and you would see it. So you can't have 20 sharks in a team. You can't have 20 teddy bears. You need some of each. And so what do we do, and how do we do it to end up helping these kids get along and work together? We do know through a lot of reading and research and presentations, and lots of you probably have kids that are of this age now too, so you're learning on the job. But there's a lot of factors that influence kids today in their thought process and why they do what they do. The very first one, their parents are critical. And parents love their kids. They don't ever want to see them fail. So they do anything and everything to try and help them through everything. And again, I'm going to talk a little bit more about this down the road, just with that whole thing about competing, that sometimes kids forget how to compete simply because they've never had to. Everything's been given to them throughout life, and it just makes it really hard for them to fight through the adversity part of it. the self-esteem movement, and that relates very much to what I just talked about. They're a product of their environment, and it's always, let's make these kids happy, let's make them positive. There's never any negatives that come out in it. So the first time you as a coach throw something at them or sit them on the bench or try to hold them accountable for something, you're the bad person. And it's really tough to get over that one. The customer service movement means that no matter what they want, they're going to get it sort of instantaneous, and it goes a little bit with the impatience one at the bottom. They want everything and they want it yesterday. They don't always want to wait until tomorrow, and they're not necessarily going to want to work for everything either. So knowing these things is going to help us moving forward. And again, this is part of mental performance. The gaming and technology is so huge. Lots of coaches now, and what we've just been through the last 10 weeks or so, we're learning a lot at Hockey Alberta about the importance of this and how can we end up transcending what's going on to be better at things and to help people out there. Kids at this point, they're more into the gaming side of things, and so a lot of that gets taken up, it will take up their time, and it ends up making it a lot harder for us. I know as a teacher, at one point you just could teach and get through a lesson. Now you have to end up being somebody that's going to entertain these kids, and you've got something every lesson that's exciting for them. And that can help us in practice planning and in game situations and things like that too. And then obviously the casual communication, just that ability. Kids, there's everything from WhatsApp to Snapchat to et cetera, that they could end up being on. So all of these factors are influencing our kids. And if we don't keep up with them, we don't understand where they're at, and we don't find ways to balance it out with whatever team and age group we're coaching, we can run into a lot of snags. So knowing personalities, knowing the major influencing factors will really help us in the mental performance piece. And what we end up needing to understand out of all of this piece, is a segue into the next one, is that whole relationship building. We need to connect with our players to understand them and have success working with them. Go back to the slide that I showed with the earlier on, just about how important it is that the more we know about these kids, the better off they're going to be, and obviously the easier it will be for us as a coach. So moving on from there, we've got a little bit of a background or a grasp of the why of mental performance, why it's important. Shared a couple of examples with you. Now to get into the next part, that whole performance on demand piece. And again, whether that's in a gym, working out, at a practice, during a game, kids are faced with the dilemma of performance on demand. And that equals pressure, the importance of what is going on, the volume that we're going to end up putting these kids through. So what are some things that we should take note of with this performance on demand piece to help our players? And this is where we'll talk a little bit more about some understanding and maybe a couple tools that go with it. So the first one, and I think we all recognize this, whether we're a coach or a player, is that the game is emotional, and we can do everything through instinct and through emotion, which is typically reacting to things, or we can be proactive to things and use logic and reasoning. And I think we need to understand that our kids are going to go through it as well. I've seen it a lot of practices. I have 3 grandsons that play hockey and a granddaughter that plays soccer during the winter. And I can see them at practice when somebody misses a pass, doesn't hit the net on a shot, the goalie makes a save, anything happens, and you can see the shoulders go down, the slap of the stick, the shaking of the head, all of that. And that's what we're talking about here, is that emotional piece. Seldom, if ever, with these 6 to 8 year olds do I see a coach come up and talk to them about it or bring the whole team in to talk about it. We don't teach our kids. We don't hold them accountable with their emotions at an early age, and how important that is in our sport. It's going to happen. It's a fast game. It's the hardest game in the world to play. We need to help our kids to see it and understand it, and then to work it through with them, not to be mad and upset, because you need to have that emotion. It's just got to be checked and balanced into the right ways of doing things. Distractors. Man, we've got a ton of them that we could talk about here. And I put up a little chart the different things that an athlete that goes through their mind during a game or a practice or a workout or anything. And then they have tons of fears, whether it's fear of failure, fear of success, they're in a slump, any of those sorts of things, that their parents are going to be upset with them. If they're older and getting ready for the draft, it could be that sort of a fear that they're not playing up to expectations. It could be that they're injured. It could be that they have negative self-talk. Scientists say we can say up to 5,000 negative things a day about ourselves. So I always tell the kids, if they're not their best cheerleaders, who is going to end up being for them? I could really get in here to talking about feedback and how we give feedback. Wally Kozak, outstanding guy that I base lots of my thought around as well, came up with right time, right place, and right amount. And I think it's a great way to look at a whole lot of this when we talk about the fears and expectations and self-talk. Is when is the right time to talk to a player? What's the right thing to say? How much do you say it? And when and what? How much should it end up being? Sometimes it's one word, maybe a slap on the shin pads with your stick, maybe a wink of your eye, maybe a high five, any of those things. These kids go through a lot. And I see it especially as the kids get older at our provincial level and the under 17 level that I work with Hockey Canada. The pressure on these kids, the distractors, is unbelievable how much it is on them. And I'm amazed sometimes that they can tie their skates and actually go out and play the game. There's very few that can go out and just play it fearlessly without any thought and just the joy of playing. So again, this is another tool for you to understand there's tons of distractors out there. How do kids show them? Well, again, I think the biggest one is just body language, and whether you looked at the body itself, and there's a whole bunch of different things in there, the way that their arms and hands are, how far away they are from you, do they roll their eyes when you're talking to them, do they look away, do they bang their stick, do they shake their head, do they give the person beside them that didn't give them a pass a dirty look? All of those things come back to body language. And I think it's one of our best tools as a coach to figure them out. When I taught, I would stand at my door every day in the morning and say good morning to all the kids as they come in, or good afternoon, and get a visual on them as they walked in. And it told me right away who I might have trouble with that day. And if I could really see that it was a problem, I might ask them to come outside for a minute, get the other kids to start working on something or read, and just talk to them, because much better to intercept it at the pass at the very beginning rather than partway through a class, or with you guys through a practice or in a game. So reading your kids, having an idea of, are they a shark? Are they a turtle? Whatever it is. And then how they deal with these things, to me, is a huge piece of that mental performance stuff moving forward. Just taking the time to understand your kids. Toolbox for you. This one here came from a fellow, Peter Jensen, who wrote Ignite the Third Factor. And this is in it. And it's a pretty simple thing to understand when you're working with a player or you're working with a whole team. The very first thing, and again, whether it's that or your family or your work environment, you need to build trust. Players need to know that you care about them before they want to know how much you know about the sport and about making them better. They need to trust you at every corner. This is where, in short term, when we start working with our staffs, how important it is for us to talk to you guys as coaches, that however you start a tournament, you need to live that the whole way through. Kids feed off of coaches emotionally, and if you are up and down, depending on the score of the game, and you're changing lines and matching and doing 100 things, they can't read you. You're not building any trust with them. And if you're not playing all your players and giving them opportunity, again, you're not building trust with them. And that goes a long way to the whole mental performance piece and having a positive culture and not having cancers within your team or your group. Encourage and use imagery. And I'll talk about that in one of my stories coming up, but just have them imagine, think the art of possibility of what could happen if they do certain things. Uncover and work through blocks. Well, kids, coaches, we have tons and tons of blocks. I call them thunderbolts, and they are going to happen. The best laid plans, no matter how prepared we are, things are going to end up happening. Thank goodness Patty is such a good teacher, and we went through this 2 or 3 times to show me how to get screen share and how to get on here and everything else, because it could have been a block. So we planned and did all of those things, but it could have not shown up. We would have had to work through it for you. So no different with your team and with individual kids. They're going to go through them, understand them, try and help them through it. And then embrace adversity. I think that's a critical piece. Like, so much right now is being written about the adventure that we're going through throughout the whole world. This is adversity. It's like, I'm old. I've never seen anything like this before, and it's worldwide. It's not just in Alberta. It's not just in Edmonton or whatever. It's all over. So instead of being the turtle and shelling away on everything and avoiding it all, how do we embrace what's going on, and how do we learn from it, and how do we become better down the road? Again, that's mental performance. That's that mental toughness, that understanding of what's going on, and how can we turn something that's negative into something that's positive. So a really good little toolbox, 4 different things to think about. I would assume, Patty, and you don't need to answer now, but maybe when we do the Q&A, I don't mind sharing this. Some might be taking notes, but if there's more things on there that you want, it's probably something, as long as we're okay with it through patenting and all of that, that we could end up sharing it. This one here, Ryan Hamilton, I work with Hockey Canada. He works with the Tampa Bay Lightning. He's their mental performance guru. And he came up with this the first year that we started the Under 17 program. He came up with the 4 C's of mental toughness. So I want to talk a little bit about that toughness piece now, which again is a big part of mental performance, because we're going to hit obstacles. We want to embrace adversity. So how do we do it? So we need to teach kids to be confident. So the extent to which a player believes he will be successful and achieve his goals. We want to challenge them. The extent to which a player responds effectively to challenges and adversity. So we want kids that are going to respond well, aka that quick little test I gave you earlier on with resiliency. We want to know and understand control, the extent to which a player exercises control over his emotions and actions. And how important is that, whether you're 8 years old, frustrated about not getting a pass or missing the net, or 16, that somebody hit you from behind and the referee didn't see it. Learning how to control yourself. And the 4th one is commitment, the extent to which a player persists with a goal or a task. In other words, you're going to fight through everything. So what I've done with this little chart is I put together some slides with some stories that will give you a little bit of an idea about each one of these 4. So the first one is about confidence. You're going to see here 3 different videos. This is a practice of a few years ago, and actually it's one of my oldest grandson doing this. The coach is at a bungee cord, so it's going to start right here. This will be the first slide with 2 of them with the bungee cord, and you probably can't see it now, but it's a rubber dinosaur back here. And so they were doing station work, and they had the kids come through, go through the bungee cord and get this dinosaur. So they're working just on the acceleration of skating. So it was an actual skating drill that they were doing. And just watch what happens here as Bronson ends up going through it. So the first time he just coasted into it, didn't really understand what was going on. And again, no matter what age kids are at, when you coach them, this is how a lot of times they're going to approach stuff. They're not going to understand what it's going to take to end up being successful, to get that dinosaur. So that was his first run at it. You notice the second one, he had a lot more oomph, a lot more jump to try and get there, but still not enough. And you notice the coaches didn't move their position from that rubber dinosaur. They were not making it easier for him to end up getting there. So they wanted to challenge him as well, but they were trying to build confidence that he could end up doing it. And notice once he's done, they're talking to him. So they're giving him what I talked about earlier, that feedback, right time, right amount, right stuff. And you notice on that one, how much stronger his start was. His stride was much stronger. and his ability to end up getting the dinosaur. So he ended up gaining confidence by doing something really simple in practice that ended up down the road will help him as a person, as an athlete, and everything else. I'm not sure where that green is coming from in my screen, but we're going to move on from it. So that would be an example of building confidence in players and using the feedback for it. Okay, I got green all over now. Patty, I don't know what's happened here, but we'll just keep rolling. So the second one is challenge. And the reason I put this was 2015. This was Canada Winter Games. This was our male team. Mike Dick was our head coach. We knew going into this event that we were not going to be the most skilled team at the tournament. So when we looked at what we were going to use for an acronym and how we were going to train our kids and teach them, we used the word commit to the grit. So we got our players to totally buy into being a gritty team. I couldn't find a picture, but we had them bring a little dirt from wherever they were in Alberta. We put it in a jar and had them mix it all together at the event so that we were Alberta built when we ended up getting there. The challenge was we had to be really resilient. We had Ryan Peckford, his first shift of the tournament against Saskatchewan, he came around the net with the puck, and a Saskatchewan player gave him an elbow to the face, and he was concussed so bad we had to send him home 2 days in. He was a power forward that we were looking at to help us to compete, doing the job that he was going to do. So we really missed him, and we're already down to 11 forwards with playing 7 games at that time in 8 days. The fellow on the bench that isn't dressed is James Hamlin. He was our captain. He injured himself the first game, hit his tailbone, and he didn't play for 3 games. When he came back, he was about 60 or 70%. If you follow the Western Hockey League now, he's a Medicine Hat. I think he's a captain, and he's a key contributor to their team. He certainly was there. All in he was throughout the whole event. So they lived these 4 words. Mike had them at summer camp. The one morning we got up really early, 5 a.m. They did a 7K run. They did a half an hour of calisthenics, and all we were looking for was character in kids. Anybody that complained, anybody that didn't buy in. And there wasn't one of those 80 athletes that didn't buy in. They all wanted to make this team. Unfortunately, or fortunately, we ended up making the gold medal game. We lost to Team Ontario 3-1. They got an empty net goal, so it was a great game. They had tons of skill in that team. We just gritted it out and grinded it out, true Alberta fashion, and did whatever we could. So commit to the grit. It was really good, and we were really challenged at that event. Control what you can. So the things that matter and things that you control, and what should you focus on. And I use this every year with our kids to talk to them about, because there are some things that you can control, some that you can't, as you guys know, and also the things that matter. So that Venn diagram, that little piece in there is what you need to end up focusing on. We did this probably on the right-hand side would have been about 2013 or 2014, a female team. And we called it Shining Eyes. And I got this idea from Ben Zander, read his book called The Art of Possibility. And what we ended up doing is a Venn diagram, as you can see, and we had the 3 words that were important for our staff that year for our kids to end up playing. So one was battle, one was communicate, one was details. We had the kids fill in what they were going to bring in each one of those categories that related to communication or battle or details. We hung them in their stalls in the dressing room so that it was a reminder. So go back to that visualization piece I talked about from Peter, one of the tools in that coach's toolbox, how important that is to put that visualization in to help kids to remember what their job is and what they've signed up for and what they're going to contribute to the team. So this one here, really, again, we try to teach the athletes, control what you can, the things that matter, and make it important, make it a focus for you. And the other one that I stuck up at the top there under control is I am, I will. Those are power statements. And that's another one that we've used over time too with kids, is especially ones that are in a funk for different reasons. They need to say those words. I am strong. I will compete. I am great. I will score goals, whatever it happens to be. So those are statements that, again, are mental performance, but they also come out as mental toughness, that when the going gets tough, it's a way for those kids, it's a little tool for them to be able to remember and be able to help them through some of that adversity. The commitment one, on the left-hand side, this was 2019 Canada Winter Games, our girls team. And we went in similar to the 2015 boys team. We knew we weren't super skilled in comparison to some of the other teams that were at the event, but we had a group of girls that really wanted to compete and do everything that they could to do well. Carla and her staff had 4 principles that we basically rolled with. Net front presence, back check to stick lifts, angle to contact. And the 4th one you can see in that girl's legs, that was at the end of the event. The number of bruises on her legs was shot blocking. Our last game against Quebec, we ended up blocking close to 50 shots from Quebec. They were a very good team, but we just outgritted them and obviously outscored them as well to get a gold medal. And up in the top, we talked about team culture's hard work, and our culture is teamwork. And so what we ended up trying to do with that group is we wanted them to commit to what the coaching staff wanted. We had 3 or 4 camps, so we taught a little bit more every camp. And my part of it on the left-hand side was all the different mental performance pieces that I stuck in. So in the summer, my focus was on mental toughness because of what we were running with. In the fall, we talked about grit and how we could be a gritty team. Christmas, we looked more just at the team values. And then at the Canada Winter Games event, each day I had a different topic. I talked to the coaches at night in our team meetings to see a little bit about what maybe they were thinking or felt that the team needed. I talked to the players, and then I put something together every day that related to each one of those. So if you count, I think there's nine different topics. There was a topic for each day. And I tried to tell stories similar to what I'm doing now. I tried to give some mental toughness ideas and concepts. I tried to build them up and be as positive as I could. I got them to buy in. They had logbooks. We did lots of team building activities that related to those sorts of things, but it was all planned. And I met lots and lots with individual players as well throughout that event. So my days were pretty full. I did the same thing with the boys as well. Obviously different topics. We didn't have quite as many camps, and some of the things that they went through, the girls didn't. So the wordage would have been a little bit different and the actual lessons would have been different. Why I put this one on here was again to show you that you can create your mental performance plan based on what your team needs, what your athletes, and again showing you earlier, their personality types, what they're going through at that time, with the different things that are influencing them, the time of the year, whether it's the beginning of a year, maybe you're going to a tournament or you're getting into playoffs or provincials. All of those things, you can gear your mental performance plan to coincide with the time of the year that you're going through. And our big one with the Winter Games group under commitment is aim, sustain, and regain. So every day, if we look at, say, the first one, the Canada Winter Games event under teammates, we would aim to be great teammates. We talked about what it would mean, what it would look like, how we could make everybody great. We would try and sustain it. And if something fell or something didn't happen that was positive, we tried to regain it, whether it was during the game or that night or the next morning. So we always looked at building, because no matter what you do, it's not always going to be flawless. There's going to be mistakes and things are going to happen. So we really tried to roll with that theme as an overall theme. And then each one of these as the event rolled on for us. Xander here, the art of possibility. Quick story. On the right-hand side is Team Pacific. Steve Hamilton was our head coach that year. It says, accomplish the imagine. Summertime, we had a camp. We had kids from BC, kids from Alberta at the camp trying out. He got them to close their eyes the very first session that we had. And he asked them to think about what it would feel like to be standing exactly like they are there on the blue line, receiving a gold medal at the end of the event. Who would they talk to first? What feelings would they have? Who would they congratulate on the team, et cetera, et cetera. So we did and again, an imagery session with them at the summer camp. And we called it Accomplish the Imagined, which is exactly like Xander's The Art of Possibility. It could happen. At the end of the day, that picture was taken. Team Pacific got a silver medal. Team Ontario got the gold medal. So again, we came very close. We went into the dressing room after the game and Steve took them through the same exercise one more time. And again, just the importance of when you're doing mental performance with your kids, how important this is to plant good seeds with them, to get them to understand if they can believe, they can achieve. I was going to put a Roger Bannister picture up here too, but nobody ran the 4-minute mile until he did it. And then look what's happened since then. It's been a long time. Feel good, play well. Couple stories here. The top one, I coached at Nate years ago. We took our guys at Christmas for a 3-day team builder, and it was the most fun we ever had with that group of guys, and we learned a ton about them. Just out on a pond, having fun playing. These are guys, some of them have played pro hockey, Western League, etc., having a blast. The bottom one, 2003, Boris and I coached Canada Winter Games, our male team, and we put together a suitcase that was a Thunderbolt suitcase. Anything that could happen to us throughout the event, right from the start to the end, we threw them in there. And every night we would pull some out and we talked to the team about it and what we could do to solve the problem. It was outstanding. Again, that feel good, play well. The third one is Destiny. The very first year that the under 18s ran, I was the head coach of them. We went to Salmon Arm. And they're all dressed up. We told the girls to bring their tackiest clothes. We had a little team builder for them. So we took this picture outside the bus. We asked the girls to get on the bus because the bus driver wanted to get a picture with them outside and inside. So we made it plausible. They jumped in, we closed the door. Lots of screams. It was like hens in a chicken house getting ready to, to go down. And we took them down to the local market. And there was probably 300 or 400 people there in Salmon Arm. And we gave them a whole bunch of different tasks to do. Dance with the oldest person there, take the youngest kid and put him on a trike, et cetera, dressed up like this. It was fantastic. The girls had a great time. And just another way of mental performance to break the ice, because it was the very first year we'd done this, and the girls were really nervous. So it was a way to get them to end up feeling good and playing really well. Last slide. I'm here at the bottom. I'm the base of support for all of you guys that are coaching up top. And I think the picture tells it all. Like, we need to support one another. None of us can get through this on our own. There's tons of stuff to learn in mental performance. I could have put on tons of books and whatever else for you, but what I've tried to do in just over an hour is explain to you the importance of mental performance to athletes and to you as a coach, and what you could, should, and hopefully will do down the road to help yourself to become better, not only for yourself and your future career as coaches, but also for the players that you're going to end up touching. So Patty, I'm done. I will leave it now up to you to fire questions at me, however that ends up happening. Thank you very much, everybody, for listening. Hopefully it was a good session for you and a good start for us at Hockey Alberta with this whole process.
Absolutely. Thank you again, Barry. We do have a couple questions, so I'll fire them your way. You did answer one of the very first ones in terms of, would you be willing to share the presentation? So if that is the case, Barry, you and I can talk maybe about the best way to do that. To everybody on the call, I obviously have your emails, so more than likely we'll be sending it out that way to you guys, so you can have access to it. Something else that I have done is obviously recorded this, so potentially, I don't know exactly what we're going to do with it, and I'm going to have to get our marketing communications group to do their magic in terms of maybe making files we can share. But sounds like we can at least get this out in some version to all of you. So we'll go with that. The first question, Barry, and I'll just use your first name. So this comes from Carl. And Barry, his question was, in terms of the 5 types of players, so the collaborator, the compromise, etc.
Yeah.
Do you approach them differently on the bench or in practice? Or do you have a blanket approach for your team and then handle those individual players differently on the ice or on the bench?
Great question. And I think it depends on the age that you're working with the kids, and how much they've had prior to, like how much knowledge you have of them. Common now among coaches is that every player is different, and so that you need to help each one of them differently. So to me, depending on what the problem is and what solution you think you're going to end up using would be a huge part of it. You can't treat 20 kids different in every drill. That's impossible to do. So you have to have some expectations as a coach of what you're going to live with, whether it's a practice or a game, and probably even more so in games. The one common fault is us as coaches is our best players typically will get away with a little more, whether it's more ice time, we play them more, we're not on them as much. And the other players see that, and it can cause a rift, both with the players as well as parents. So one of the pieces of advice I'd give you is know your kids, but also have some parent meetings early on and player meetings and talk to them about it. You're all different. Here's what's going to happen throughout the year. Here's how I'm going to deal with it. And if you have concerns, and again, the old style of, talk to my hand or get my manager, to me doesn't fit anymore either. I think you need to be open and transparent with everybody. So simple and short answer is treat them all different, but hold them accountable. Have team rules, have them help to make the team rules, and sort of go from there with each one of them.
Excellent. Well, thank you, Barry. The next one comes from Jeff, and Jeff is wondering, in terms of coaching, he's looking to improve in his coaching game, improve how he can help his players. So, Barry, do you have any best practices for coaches in terms of what their development can be to help them become the best coach they would like to in terms of their goals and their vision?
Yeah, and I think that's a broad question, but I talked to a boy today. He's not a boy anymore, he's a man with a family, but he was in my hockey program years ago, and he's playing actually over in Switzerland now. And he's realizing that when his playing career is over, he wants to coach, he loves the game. So probably I answered this question with him, but I won't be as elaborate tonight. But what I told him first off is you need to know what your strengths are. And in order to do that, there's lots of things online now that you can end up going to take a look at that. There's a grit test. There's stuff that we have. But knowing who you are, and the reason I say that is because not everybody can be like me as an example with this mental performance piece. Like some people don't want to put as much time into something like that. But looking at those 3 buckets, the technical, the physical, and the mental performance piece, I think all 3 of them require a lot of time. Key things would be pick up some books and start reading. I had the pleasure of working with Doug Swanson years and years ago when he did some mental performance for Hockey Alberta back in the early 2000s. And he got me into the reading part of it, and that's actually where my bug came from. Anything from leadership to biographies to there's a million things out there now on coaching, but it's going to help you to start to understand who you are and set your values and beliefs. From there, then you can move into those 3 buckets of how much time you want to put into each one. And honestly, there's another slide I didn't show, but you've got one glass that's pretty full. And if I use this water glass that I have here, it's full of water or full of knowledge. But if I brought a picture and poured that water into it, that pitcher's hardly started to be full. And I think we need to look at that as coaches to say, we know a fair amount now, but there's how much more can we end up getting to know. So reading, finding some mentors, finding other people like-minded to talk to me, those would be real key areas to get out and do some finding out for yourself.
Excellent. So maybe what I'll do, Barry, is I'll lead you right into this next one, because it kind of takes, right off into what you kind of just explained. So it comes from Devin. Is what is your favorite book on sports mental toughness?
Oh boy. I've got a library here. I could get up and bring about 50 of them out. But the one, and I sort of call it my Bible, it's called Thinking Body, Dancing Minds. Thinking Body, Dancing Minds. And it's written by Jeremy Lynch and somebody from the East. And it's Eastern philosophy or Eastern religion and Western sports tied into one. Each chapter, there's probably 40 chapters, covers a topic. Each one of them has sports stories in it. It'll then have, like I said, that I am, I will statement. So it'll have statements like that to help the athletes. It will give the athletes ideas of different things that they can do and practice, becoming better at that. And very easy to read. And depending on what the person is going through, I refer lots of kids to those. And what I do is I give them a chapter to read, tell them in the next morning or next practice or next game or whatever, we're going to talk about it. I want to know what they've learned. So I make sure I know what the chapter was about if I am forgetful. We'll spend some time doing it, and then usually we'll set a goal as far as trying to help them in that next practice or then that next game based on what it is. Sometimes I'll even just tell them, I want you to go and pick what you think you're struggling with, and then we'll start talking from there. So Thinking Body, Dancing Minds. It's not a mental toughness book, but it's a mental performance book that can relate to mental toughness.
Excellent. Thanks, Barry. Couple questions here from Gary. He was wondering, if he scored low on your test at the start, what are the best ways to improve? And the second question he had was, in terms of your team rules, how rigid should you be as a coach?
Okay, to answer the first question, 2 things you can do, and it was Gary that asked that.
Yes.
The first one is go online and look up Angela Duckworth and take the grit test. Secondly, there's a book out by Angela Duckworth called Grit, and it talks about persistence and passion being the 2 things that make up gritty performance from kids, players. And she doesn't just base it on sports. It's about life in general and how we can end up doing things, how we raise our kids. Tons of great ideas in it. To me, that would be an excellent start, is that book and taking that test. You'll find out a lot about yourself. I've done it, and it's actually pretty revealing if you do it honestly. And the book itself will be a help. And then there's tons of ideas within the book that you can end up going from there to learn about resilience or any of the other topics that you might want to look at. And the second question was about rules. And again, when we do our provincial teams, what we end up doing is we will come up with what we call non-negotiable rules. So things that we value as a staff. And I'll give you just a couple of examples here. Compete for everything. Everything is earned. Do it the right way. Protect the team. Everything matters that a team's going to have. And those would be non-negotiable. So the word compete comes out no matter what the score, no matter what the situation, no matter when in practice, we're always going to compete. Non-negotiable, that's the rule. And then you have the negotiables. And here's where, if you've read anything, Pat Riley wrote a book years ago called, I believe, The Winner Within. And he talked about a covenant, a team covenant. And this is where I picked that idea up at, and we do it with all our provincial teams. So you sit with your team, they come up with the non-negotiable rules. So things that they can govern themselves with, the negotiable rules, they can govern themselves with, that you have some say in it. So it might be something as simple as, when does the music have to go off in the dressing room before a practice or a game? When do I need to arrive at the rink prior to a practice or prior to a game? Do I have to warm up with my teammates, or can I do some myself? Those sorts of things. So if you have your players help you to make those rules, and they can do it even at 8 or 9 years old, they're smart enough, they'll figure it out. You don't need 50 of them. To me, that's half of it. So the values and the negotiables and non-negotiables. And then the other part I think that's critical with this is holding players to be accountable. You can't tell kids that they need to take short shifts, and then your best players are staying out for 3 minutes. And even when they score a goal at 3 minutes, coming in and you're patting them on the back, and the next player comes in at a minute and you're giving him a hard time because he took a long shift. So you have to hold them accountable, and you have to hold yourself accountable. Can you be willing to bend? It goes back to that earlier question about kids and personalities and everything else, and knowing them. There might be a time where you can bend because the situation allows it. And there might be times when, no matter how badly you might want to, you can't do it, just because of that accountability piece and how it's ended up coming up.
Excellent. So Dan has a couple questions, and Dan, I can probably answer the first one for you. And for anybody else that's on, thank you guys. Obviously, there's a lot smarter people out there in terms of technology than I am. YouTube seems to be a pretty good spot for us to upload these, the presentation and videos. So talk to our marketing and communications department tomorrow and see what they have. I know we do have a YouTube channel, so maybe that's where we're going to go with this. And the second part to Dan, your question was a student learning guide beforehand. Something is a good idea. So maybe what I'll do is I'll talk to the presenters before, and we will see if there's something we can get into your guys' hands as handouts beforehand, if there is anything they think that would be beneficial to you. Dan's question to you, Barry, though, he asked, there was a team building strategy that didn't work in your past. Why did that not work for that specific team?
My third run at Alberta Cup as a head coach, we went down south. We were doing a team builder called Climb the Mountain. Well, actually, I'll tell two stories. Two kids hold a stick, and you get players and partners holding sticks all the way down. So they form a mountain, so up, down on the climb, and every player has to climb the mountain. So they're supporting one another going over it. Jared Carley that year weighed about 220 as a bantam. He was a big kid. He stepped on a brand new twig of Jordan tutus and snapped it. So that would be an example of a team builder that started out positive, because we had the Alberta Cup at the end of the mountain, and we didn't get too far before the brand new stick broke. Second story, but this one here probably is, there's a water bucket one that I'm sure a lot of you out there have done. So I'm coaching Team Pacific. We get to the event in Winnipeg. I get the kids laying down in three teams. Each one has a bucket. They've got both their feet up on the bucket with their shoes and socks on. And I filled the buckets with half full of water and half full of ice from the Zamboni. So they're heavy and it's very wet. Their task was to start with as a team is to take all their shoes and socks off and then put them back on without lowering the bucket, and then lower it once their shoes are back on. So they all did it. And then I said, now we're going to turn this into a compete team builder. And what I want you to do is it's going to be a race. And we've got something for the winner, something for the loser. Go. And so the one team, the bucket started to tip and a little bit of water started to fall out. And one of the players jumped out of it and jumped onto the bench beside me. And I was crestfallen because it took me the whole tournament to try and get this kid back in with the rest of the team, because they knew that he had bailed on them in a situation like this. So I would never, ever do that team builder again at an event. I would save it and do it at a camp where I'm trying to learn about character of a person. Good question. Bad memory.
Excellent. Guys, I have 5 more questions here. I think maybe what we'll do is we'll get through these next 5 and then call it a night. But if you had another question that maybe wasn't answered during our presentation, feel free to send it my way. And what I can do is connect with Barry and maybe have him answer it afterwards. I'm just looking at the time here. It's 7:43. So Barry, the next question comes from Brian. He was asking, do you know of, or do we have any resources online for mental and team building areas, I suppose, I guess you could put it as?
Well, there's not a lot that we have on mental performance. I'll give him one solution, is become one of our staff members in the next few years in our grassroots programs, because I've just built a mental performance program for them. So it'll do a sort of a step-by-step. It'll teach them a bunch of things about how to do it, some different ideas. So that would be, I guess, from that side of it, the mental performance piece. No different with the team building side. I've put together a booklet, probably has, I don't know, hundreds of team builders in it, things that we've done over the years. Team building broken down into 5 phases: icebreakers, communication, leadership, trust, and cooperation activities. So it's another one. If you join our Team Alberta staff in any way, shape, or form, you would have privy to that information. Online, we don't, as of yet, to my knowledge, have that stuff that we just share out.
Yes, I agree. And maybe I can speak to this too. I know there's a bunch of coaches on here that have gone through the Team Alberta process, either with Alberta Cup or even into Team Alberta itself. However, that was one of the most instrumental times in my coaching career. I was able to do Alberta Cup twice, and what a fantastic experience. That was really what gave me the opportunity and the start into my coaching career. Again, we were blessed with Barry and Fran and a whole bunch of other, people and coaches who really helped mold us, our thoughts, and helped, I guess, more than anything, my life, my coaching career that was the start for me. So I echo those sentiments, Barry, where if you guys would really like to get into coaching, improve yourselves, that look for the Pee Wee prospects. The Alberta Cup on the male side, the female side has the challenge. Just a wonderful way to challenge yourselves as coaches, but also get to know some fantastic kids. So that would be my 2 cents on that one. Barry, the next one comes from Stacy, and she was wondering, in terms of the first team meeting, what's the most important thing to say? And is there anything that you would maybe not say in the first team meeting, but keep for later on in the season?
Well, I would welcome everybody to the meeting. That would be the first thing I'd say. After being a smart ass, I think one of the things that people want when they go to a team meeting, especially a new team, a new coach and all of that, is who you are. So finding some way to share a little bit about you and your personal philosophy and values would be a really good start. They get to have a feel for who you are. The other one is I would be transparent, and I would show vulnerability right away, that I'm not always right. There's other ways to skin a cat. So if things come up, so that whole thing about the communication piece with parents, you want them, if we're talking parent meeting, you want them to feel comfortable being around you, and the fact that you're their de facto parent when they're away from them and they're with you. Again, we know what parents can be like, so the more that you can get them to be allies on your side, the better off you are.
Excellent. Next one, Barry, comes from Brad, and he was wondering, what type of items do you emphasize in a player's post-game logbook?
Feel good, play well. So there's lots of information out on that as well. But to me, a logbook is a reflection. So if your logbook starts every game with, a personal goal, something that you want to end up achieving or how you want to feel, and I go back to that water bottle at the very start of my presentation, that's what the player and I would review at the end. And actually, he did a logbook of sorts too for me, like we added it up and all of that. And we talked about it. We talked about feelings and why he put what he did down, why he felt the way that he did. And then at the end of the day, obviously, what he learned and what he was going to try and accomplish the next day. So all of those things start with why. And if you listen to anything from Simon Sinek, everything starts with why. I use start with the end in mind. Really, it's the same thing. So to me, that would be the best advice I'd give.
Excellent. Just a couple more here, Barry. And this one comes from Sarah, and she has finished the book Legacy, and it talks about a ton on empowering the team and decisions. So the question she had is, how would you go about giving players responsibilities in terms of team decisions and development in short-term competition? And what would be the most important step with this mindset after player communication, relationship building with your players?
Okay, so how would you give them the first part of it was just how would you help them to give them ideas, concepts?
More like the responsibilities in terms of team decisions and development in the short-term competition.
Okay, gotcha. So with that one, and again, if I use the covenant piece, you could have a team meeting to start with. You talk about your values. Typically what we do with Team Alberta from there is the coaching staff will put together an acronym. For example, the guys was pound the stone. And so what we did with the values of pound the stone means chip away every day, one little piece at a time. So sitting with the players and getting their thoughts and feelings on what that means to them. And from there, the responsibility side comes out. So you know that in pounding the stone, not everybody is going to be good every day. So how do we decide who's going to help different players with it? Whether it's captains on the team, whether it's line mates, whether it's through meetings that we're going to end up having. But things of that nature. And again, you go back to just building those relationships between the coaching staff and the players. We had a really interesting one today on a conference call where the coach, their acronym had 4 different words to it. I can't remember what it was, but what at the end of the day, what they did is every game, 4 different players became the captains for the day. And each captain got one of the 4 words. So one might be communicate, one might be compete. And so the captain that got the communicate one would be looking for throughout the day, both on and off the ice, things that related to that, the players on the team that communicated with one another, both positive and negative. If they weren't talking, if it was bad body language, or the opposite, it was really good tapping the pads and doing things, their responsibility was to let that player, those players know they were doing a great job with communicating that day. And the same with the other 4 letters. And to me, it was ingenious, very creative, and it really would build a responsible team because they would all be looking for that stuff and waiting for somebody, hopefully, to see what they were doing. So easy example. And to me, again, it's just about helping them to see that that they can do whatever they want through you, the coach, just trying to find some ways to help them get there.
Excellent. So, okay, and I apologize, Sarah, if I'm messing this up a little bit, but I think what the next second part to that question is, Barry, so we all of a sudden now we have our team responsibilities, our player responsibilities. So now we've communicated those. We've built the relationships with the players, and what's the most important step in getting the mindset of those team decisions to those players? I think you might have kind of answered that, but that was the second part to that question.
So just how to get those ideas out?
Yes.
I've used it forever as every player every day. So what does that mean to me might be different than what it means to Sarah, but it could be, and again, go back to kids of today, the social media side, maybe it's something that they use that way. Maybe it's a poster that they're going to put up in short term. Maybe it's going to be in their locker room. Maybe it's a daily goal that they're going to end up having and working towards, and having a bar graph of what the players felt. Did they achieve it that day or not? So was it 100%? Was it 70? Was it 40? And then how can we get better every day? And maybe that's an idea that if you have in short term, I think is what she was asking. So over the course of the 5 days of the event, you might have 5 different things that you want responsibility for. And you're going to build 1 to 2 to 3 to 4 to 5. And you keep continuing with 1, which might be the most important every day. And you add another one each day. So at the end, you've got all 5 of them in there, but you've got the most important ones that you think as a coach at the beginning, and you're hoping what you're going to see, like we always hope in short term, is we're going to get better every day. So it's a way to measure that as well, and talk to the players about it. Why did it work? Why didn't it? What can we do different, et cetera, to end up achieving it.
All right, Barry, last question, and this one comes from Jeff. And, it's something that I think as we come out of, everything we've been put through over the last couple months, and in terms of mental performance within our players, Jeff is wondering if our hockey players are going to be, is there going to be a change in your mind or your opinion, one way or the other, with us coming out of our circumstances that we've been put into, and potentially not, let's put it one way, hockey coming back traditionally? Will there be challenges for the mental side of the game with those players as we move forward?
Definitely. I think first off, and again, I just use my grandsons as an example. They're doing a whole bunch of other sports right now, but they're still shooting pucks and stick handling in the garage. Not every day, but they're still doing it. They're excited to get back, and they're only 8 years old, and 9 and 8. But that would give me, as a grandparent or a parent, the understanding that they are very excited to get back in the ice. They're missing it, but it's still only May, right? Like, we've got a whole summer to go through, so we need to keep that in mind, because we have time in our hands. But when we get back, and however it looks, it's going to be different. Government already has got strict guidelines and rules. So again, go back to Sarah's question in a way too, even though it related to a different topic. It's about us and having to teach the kids and the parents that it is going to be different. Here's what it is. Here's our values. Here's how we're going to try and approach it as coaches. And here's what we're going to try to do to work with you guys together to make the situation as best as it can be. If we can only have 4 or 5 players on the ice at once until December, that's the way it's going to make it work. How are we going to try and be creative to get the most out of it, and so that the players are going to have fun and we're going to have fun? It's a big challenge for all of us. It's something at the end of the day that I hope you all have your thinking caps on. I'd mentioned earlier about talking to other people just to get ideas, reading books, but going online and seeing what other people are doing, whether it's Alberta, Canada, the USA, whatever. Tons of stuff out there. But if any of us think that coming out of this, that it's going to go back to the way it was, we're not sitting right. There is going to be a lot of change. We have to be prepared for it as best we can, and then just work through it to the best of our ability. Be transparent, be honest with everybody that you're working with, and good things will end up happening out of it.
Excellent. That is all of the questions. Again, I'd like to thank all of you that are still on, and everybody that did attend tonight. A couple of the other things that I have written down as I was looking through the chat room, And a lot of the coaches, you guys have brought up some great ideas, some great things that I will do is take, those things back to our development team. And maybe these are things that we can continue to work on to provide, coaches and resources. And that's what a lot of the comments have been in terms of resources, what we can do. And the nice thing is we have an entire development team at Hockey Alberta that this is what we do day in and day out. So I'll take those ideas and we will discuss them and see what we can do to put out there and help you guys. But beyond that, Barry, thank you very, very much. It is 7:58, and I think that is it for everybody. That's it for me.
I have one thing, Patty.
Absolutely, Barry.
I'll put together a book list for people, like that question about mental toughness stuff. I'll put a list together, some different things, and categorize it for you as well.
Sounds like a plan. Well, thank you again to everybody. Thank you, Barry. Appreciate it. We look forward to seeing you guys at the next one. Have a wonderful evening and a wonderful weekend. All the best to you.
Thanks, everyone. Take care.